Hi, everyone. So again, my name is Tiffany Nguyen Van. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And yeah, so just a little bit about me real quick. I have been working in childcare for the last 3 years, mainly in the classroom. And so I've been in-home providers, working at in-home providers. I've been at centers. And so definitely been on the ground running and helping kids in the classroom. And just this September last year is the first time I transferred over to CCR&R. So it's a new a new realm from leaving the classroom to going out here in CCR&R, and I've learned a lot in this past year, and so I'm excited to be here today to just share what I've learned so far and just how just what childcare looks like right now in Clackamas County and in Oregon. So go ahead and go to, oh, not yet, but we're going to go through a video first. And so it's a TED Talk, and we'll have a short discussion after the video. Okay. So I think she's probably one of the bravest 7-year-olds that I can think of, standing up there talking to all those adults at a TED Talk of all places. So yeah, love that video. Um, so yeah, now I just want to go into a really just short discussion and just see what everyone's thoughts are on the video. Like how can we connect this back to this learning series? And why are we talking about childcare right now? What's the importance of it? And I think, the video sort of went over that a little bit, but would love to hear everyone's thoughts.
Well, it's just how important it is to play with your children, and even just the peekaboo, how engaging that was, and about how our parents, childcare can also be a break for them, and can putting them into a healthy, safe childcare environment is really going to help their children in the long run.
Yeah,
And that's where
exactly.
you all come in.
Yeah, thanks, Jan.
Yeah, it's a whole different aspect or outlook on childcare, because I would seem to think that in my culture at least, childcare is just an adult in the room with the child. Not necessarily interacting with the child, just being there watching the child, making sure it doesn't get into any trouble.
Yeah. Thanks, Irene. Anyone else?
This is Cindy. I thought the video was great, and it's just another example and reminder of how glued people are to their electronics, their phones. And it's just a great reminder to put it down, pay attention to the child, and just how valuable valuable that is to the child and their development. And just can't say enough. It's a great video. I would love to see that be used in so many different programs to remind people. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Cindy. And Anella in the chat wrote that, hello, everyone. I'm going to type since I'm a little under the weather. Sorry for my camera being off. Highlighting the importance of the first grade even starts. Yeah, so highlighting that, all of this is happening even before first grade, right? Yeah, for sure. And I also think it's a great reminder for us that, the work that we're doing and for the families um, childcare, like, it's just so much more than just babysitting or just you're just watching the child or putting them in front of a screen, right? It's really engaging with them. And like she mentioned early and often, and that for children, where they're surrounded by communities that are going to influence them and be part of their journey. And part of that is childcare. and the childcare providers, and they play a very important role in all of that. Oftentimes, sometimes being some of the first teachers for these kiddos, right? So yeah, so just wanted to start our conversation with that video. Thank you everyone for with your discussion pieces, really appreciate it. So we're just gonna go into just talking about what childcare looks like right now in Oregon, its status before the pandemic, what it is now, and just all that time in between, and just see what we can learn from that. So we'll go ahead, Gabby. Next slide, please. Thank you. So first is a really important term that has been going around, and that is childcare desert. So what is that? What does that mean? And so childcare desert just means that it's a community with more than 3 children for every regulated childcare slot. And when we say regulated childcare slot, we mean licensed providers. So centers, our certified families, and our registered families. So that would mean that, yeah, so there's 3 for every 3 children between the age in preschool ages, that there's 1 slot available for them. So for all of them. So that's the term childcare desert. And then we're just going to look through some statistics as well. And bear with me, this is a lot of data. So, but we're just going to start off with just what did childcare look like in 2018 in Oregon. 655,634 children under the age of 13 lived in Oregon at this time. And combining the center and family slots available, there was 107,269 slots. And so in 2018 in Oregon, we saw only 16% of children under the age of 13 had access to visible childcare in Oregon. And then when we look at Clackamas County in 2018, 64,719 children under the age of 13 living in Oregon, with a little over 9,000 slots available. And that would put us at 14% of children under the age of 13 having access to visible childcare. And all of this data is pulled from Oregon State University and the study that they've done in just looking at childcare deserts. And this is the infographic that they beautifully made and laid out for us. And it really just brings it home to just what 2018 looked like and when we started the study. And here on the left side of the infographic, it tells us that there are 8 infants and toddlers for a single childcare slot in Oregon. And for preschool age children, just underneath, the 3 for every single slot. And then when we break it down into the counties, all 36 counties at the time were childcare deserts for infants and toddlers. And then all but 9 counties were childcare deserts for preschool age children. And the infographic also points out that without publicly funded slots, you would add 7 additional counties would be considered childcare deserts. So yeah, that very telling of just where childcare and just the availability where that was at in 2018. And then then they did the study again and released for 2020. And it's important to note that this was pre-COVID numbers. So 625,634 children under the age of 13 living in Oregon at this time, with 124,424 slots. Again, with our centers and family homes combined. And we're looking at 20% of children under the age of 13 having access to visible childcare. So from 2018 to 2020, we did see a little bit of an increase in Oregon. And also another thing to point out is that in this study, this is also the first time the term severe desert also comes up. And this was specifically for our infants and toddlers. And when we say severe desert, we mean that there's 1 slot for every 10 children. So in 2020, half of Oregon's counties were considered severe deserts for infants and toddlers. And when we refer back to the video and how important it is at these early stages, right, trying to get that connection for them, seeing those numbers, it's just really, really sad to see So, and then in Clackamas County for 2020, we saw 61,346 children living in under the age of 13 living in Oregon with 9,878 slots. And that was so that puts us 16% of children under the age of 13 having visible child care in Oregon. And then back to the infographic for 2020. We saw a slight improvement with now 7 infants and toddlers for a single childcare slot, but still seeing that all of the counties are still considered childcare deserts, and 3 preschool children for every single slot. And now all but 11 Oregon counties are considered childcare deserts at this time. And again, publicly funded slots, still very important in this data. And now jumping to, so last year, 2022, we see that 587,148 children under the age of 13 living in Oregon with 108,258 slots. We're seeing 18% of children under the age of 13 having visible access to visible childcare, and this has gone down from 2020. So and even though we're like, well, that's only a few percent, it's still a lot. It really is. And in 2022, the severe desert status still remains for infants and toddlers, with 1/3 of Oregon's counties considered severe deserts for infants and toddlers in 2022. And then in Clackamas County, we had 59,494 children under the age of 13 living in Oregon, with 10,382 slots in centers and family child care homes. And that puts us at 17% of children under the age of 13 with access to visible childcare in Oregon. And that's just 1% up from 2022. And I know that there have been lots of efforts just to get us to that 1% increase, right? So we're seeing a little bit improvement, but with how many children there are, we definitely need more. So and then just that last bit with the infograph again from Oregon State, again, seeing some improvement, 6 infants from the 7. And I love how they wrote here, almost all of Oregon counties are child care deserts. So, and we're seeing half of counties for the preschool age children. But we're still stuck in that 3 preschool age children for a single child care slot with our preschool age children. So. Yeah, and so now we can all take a deep breath. That's all the data that we're going to go through. And I understand it's a very overwhelming. I still feel overwhelmed when I look through all of this. And so, but yeah, we're going to go into our second discussion, and I'm going to have Crystal lead that.
Thank you, Tiffany. Yeah, so that was a lot of information and data that was shared. And I just kind of want to open it up to all of you. How are we feeling about this? What are your initial thoughts with the data that Tiffany just shared? And feel free to, just reach out or raise your hand, whichever you prefer.
Well, I can share. I had some new neighbors move in who had a baby, and they both, one is a radiologist, the other one is a pharmacist, really well-educated people, but had no idea about the childcare landscape in Oregon. And so they didn't start looking for childcare until after their baby was born. And by then it was too late. And it took them, well, now it's been 7 months to be able to get their baby into a slot. So the sooner people can start looking for childcare and get on lists, the better.
Yeah, that's a really great point, Jan. Anyone else want to partake in the conversation or just have some thoughts about it? Oh, there we go. Yes. Kelvin?
Hi, thanks. Children, Family, and Community Connections here, Kelvin Graff. So there's a lot of data, which understandably is easier to track when we're talking about visible childcare. Is anybody able to explore what the invisible childcare is looking like right now? The people who are not registered, the grandparents, the uncles, the et cetera. Is there, how do we know what's going on with that side of the story?
So, Calvin, for that question, it's a little bit harder to track that data just because a lot of the family, what we call family neighbor, family friends neighbor care, right? They're often considered license exempt.
Yeah.
So they're not tracked on like FCCO Find Childcare Oregon's database, right? They're not tracked on there, and they're not licensed with DELP, right? And so, or in the Office of Child Care. And so so trying to get and gather that data is much more difficult than having being able to gather with our licensed providers who we have their emails and can send all these surveys
Yep.
to them and ask information. But that's such a valid point, asking about that. And a lot of times, a lot of families are using that care more often than they are with licensed providers because of flexibility or how their schedule is and filling in all those gaps, right? So
yeah, and that's what I encounter a lot, is that there's, for some families I'm working with, there's a lot of resistance to using childcare registered providers. So everybody's looking for families, neighbors, friends. A lot of people are utilizing that. What I'm trying to do in those situations is encourage them as much as possible to have the conversation with their providers to get them registered, because they're eligible for ERDC through our connections with ODHS. And we're starting to see more people being willing to have that conversation with those providers. So that might help get you some more data, even if they're only providing childcare for their grandkids or something like that. At least they'll be trackable now. And I'm really, really hoping, especially now that ERDC is available for TANF recipients en masse like this, that's going to help increase the provider pool for folks too. Because like Jen was saying, we've got so many people who are on wait lists for half a year or more. Meanwhile, they're feeling the extreme pressure of trying to get back to employment, in a month or two. But we just don't have the childcare in place yet. So I'm encouraged that we have some new options that we didn't before. And I'm hoping, just while I've got the floor here for a sec, I'm hoping, is there a way for us to get a copy of this recording? Because a lot of my colleagues couldn't attend today, and I think that they would find this very interesting.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
I'm also going to say that what's interesting about my neighbors is they actually had to fly her mom over from Hawaii to stay with them to care for the baby. Their preference would have been to have the baby in childcare, but they at least had a parent that they could have come on in and watch their baby. But so to that point, I think some people who are using family, neighbors, friends to watch their children might rather have their kids in childcare, but because there's not a slot available, they have to resort to that.
Yeah, Jan, Kelvin, those are all great points. And I think that's one of the reasons just kind of talking about like, how are we in these roles navigating these conversations? Calvin, I think that's a great idea that you're talking to these parents and referring them to different resources, because, that's what we do. We find solutions for these barriers that our participants are facing. And, I'm not sure about if all of you or some of you, but I personally am not a parent. So I was very, just out of the loop. This concept was a little foreign. I knew it was difficult. But, working with people, realizing like what the need was, it just kind of like learning about all of the resources that Tiffany had presented, and, just being able to provide that solution. So I'm going to open it up and just kind of ask out of curiosity, like, how do you feel this has affected you as a resource navigator, or those who are front facing with, participants? How has that conversation gone, and have you felt, having those talks with people?
I will go. So in our department, in our program, it has forced some participants to postpone their training start date because they weren't able to secure a child care provider for their child. So it just puts them in a bind and they're not able to do their training when they're wanting to. And sometimes the training that they wanted may not be offered for another 3 or 6 months. So it's just not a very good plan for people who need training.
Thank you, Irene. Definitely, that's one of the biggest barriers, especially when we want to help people get back into employment. I know one of the conversations that I've had with some participants is, how can I start working if I don't even have a place for childcare, or a place to accept my child? And so, figuring out and having those difficult conversations and finding out alternative solutions. So yeah, that's if anyone else wants to share, you're welcome to do so. And if not, then we can hop into the next section. Okay, Nella, thank you. She shared, I was in a similar situation. One of my participants wasn't able to start training due to lack of childcare for their infant. Definitely. And I know Tiffany will discuss infant childcare later on, but yes, definitely a huge, huge barrier.
And to what you're saying, Irene, it's like we're asking people to think almost 5 years in advance, right? To be able to just picture all of these scenarios. And for many, the struggle to even think about what's happening the next day and the next day is part of that, right? And so, this is just adding a lot more, like it just adds more stress onto some situations that's already very stressful. So yeah, and I'm hearing it from my role in being the child care navigator, and especially working with parents who are going through the grants that Workforce is providing, the career grants. I'm hearing it from them all the time as well. I can't do this. I can't do this until childcare, like insert blank, like until childcare. So yeah, we're definitely hearing all of that as well. We'll move on to the next part. So in this next section, I titled it, "What is childcare exactly?" So a parent or student comes to you looking for childcare, but what does that mean exactly? So we're going to break it down to in these two sections. Is it just babysitting? And then just really talking about just the types of childcare that's available in Oregon. So childcare versus babysitting. So this is a very hot button topic in the childcare industry. Is it just babysitting? Well, babysitting, we would really consider that more that's just childcare being provided for like a parent date night, or just a couple of hours that are paid for those hours that they're there watching the child. And really the expectations aren't really to be doing any teaching, right? You're just doing supervision and oftentimes just maintenance, like make sure the house stays clean, and supervising these kids and making sure they're not getting into too much trouble. And then we have childcare and our childcare professionals. And I want to break it down into these really two categories. We talk about childcare professionals, one, they're professionals. They're committed to child development as a career path and a profession. Some have certificates or degrees, and some may have just a lot of community-based training. And then there's just this understanding as a whole that there's just this importance of healthy and strong adult child relationships, and ensuring that children are ready for kindergarten and they take the required trainings, right? Safe sleep, first aid, CPR, food handlers, etc. And then another part to them is that they're entrepreneurs. They're really here to provide a service that's needed by the workforce, whether they need part-time, full-time, or even sometimes 24-hour childcare. And they're also running a business. So there's costs, upkeep, and just responsibilities for their employees. And with childcare and childcare professionals, we're looking at childcare that's more long-term, often provided care for infancy to 5 years old, as well as some school-age children as well, up to 13 years old. And so why this distinction? Why is this so important? And I really felt like this was necessary to go through because as we're moving forward in these sessions, it's really important to keep in mind that this sort of explains why there's certain parts of the childcare industry, just that why it is the way it is. So, for example, childcare is expensive, and we're hearing that a lot from our participants, right? Very, very just so much. It's so expensive every month. Well, we also need to understand that they're running a business. They need to set their prices to help with the costs and the upkeep, and even at those prices that are there now, they're not even considered true cost prices. And what I mean by that is like for a lot of these providers, they set these prices at what it will help them, but then at the same time, what they feel like parents are trying to help parents as well. They're not exactly at the level of the cost that it would take to be profitable in the business, right? And and on top of all that, everything is going up. Food is going up. Insurance to have this business is going up. And then on top of all of that, we're relying parents to all pay for this with an income that often isn't even livable. So it's really just a broken business model at the end of the day. So I think that's important to understand here, as well as just, when we say, is this just babysitting? It really just it's very disrespectful to the people who are in this industry and working so hard and are committed to providing these opportunities and spaces for these children to learn and grow, and like the video was titled Thrive, right? To really help them thrive. And I just, so apologies for putting on my advocacy pants here for a second, but it's just so important to make sure that we recognize that these are professionals and we are paying for this service that will ultimately helping our children and helping the workforce. They're the foundation to all of this. And at the end of the day, this business isn't about money for them. It's about passion and commitment to helping children. And I hope that with this distinction, we can really help parents and those engaging with them just to have more sympathy towards what they're going through and what they're dealing with and all the variables that they're having to go through. And it's not because of them. The lack of childcare slots isn't often because of them. They want to stay in business. They want to be there, but you can't, you know, it's hard. I use this term a lot. Passion doesn't pay the bills, right? They have to make those hard decisions. And when we are looking at difficulties in retention and recruitment, and why are all these child cares closing? Well, it's really a systemic issue. So that's why I wanted to just make sure that we recognize these distinctions between babysitting and childcare, and just recognize as well that they have a lot, the industry has a lot going on right now. And so yeah, just wanted to say some of that real quick, and I'll step off the soapbox now. So yeah, we can move on to the next slide. Okay, so this next one is just, I wanted to really identify just the types of childcare that's available in Oregon right now. And so one, Oregon is a mixed delivery system. So families are really encouraged to pick the childcare that really fits their needs. And for some parents, there might be concerns. For example, I've had some participants who've told me, oh, I'm really concerned about mixed age groups. I don't want my infant being around all those high energy preschoolers running around. And so I would often recommend, okay, then let's try looking for a childcare center then, where the classrooms are often split up into their age groups, right? And for some families who really need it, they can also find publicly funded childcare slots as well. So Preschool Promise, Head Start, Preschool for All. So, and then again, it just really depends on the county that they live in and their income levels. But yeah, that mixed delivery system really just helps meet all the needs that and can be individualized for families, right? And then we have also our other categories. So we have our licensed providers, and those are our registered families, our certified families, and our certified centers. Registered families are care offered in their home, and it's up to around 10 children at once. And we have our certified families, which is another provider that also provide care in their home, and it's up to 16 children at once. Then we have our certified centers, which is care in often a building, not a home, and the max number of children is dependent on the floor plan, the space that they have, and just the number of staff that they have. And then we have our license exempt providers. So these are childcare programs that tend to be really small, in-home providers, or even short day programs for school-age children, and licensing rules don't apply to license exempt programs. The recorded programs are preschool programs that operate at 4 hours or less per day, and are also could be school-age programs that are eligible for children who are kindergarten through 13 years old. So, for example, Girl Scouts would be considered a recorded program. And in this category as well, we also have our family, friend, and neighbor care that we mentioned earlier in our discussion. And then lastly, we have also our regulated subsidy programs, which are programs that care for children of eligible low-income families that receive help paying for childcare through the employment-related daycare or ERDC while they're working. And you can be either license exempt or a licensed provider. You just have to meet the certain requirements that ODHS has for you and be approved and listed with them. So we're gonna go, now that we finished that portion, I'm gonna have Julia lead the this last discussion.
Thank you, Tiffany. Hi, everyone. Yeah, as Tiffany says, now it's time to discuss some of the information that she just shared with us. And I'm going to start sharing that personally, I've learned a lot about childcare in the past year, working with Tiffany in the childcare grant that we have in our department, and of course, working on these learning sessions to share with all of you. For example, I didn't know about the different types of childcare. I didn't know about the specific difference between childcare and babysitting. I thought that they were very similar. And I was not aware of how difficult it was to find childcare due to the lack of providers. Now, knowing all this information has helped me a lot, in my position to working with students or parents trying to find childcare to be able to go back to school, to be able to get a job. And when I work with them, I let them know that finding childcare is not an easy process, and we are going to need more than just a couple of weeks to find a provider that works for them. Of course, some of the factors that we need to consider is that number of children, location, schedule, and other different information that we're going to need from them. Sometimes we receive, or some students reach out to us like 2 or 3 weeks before the first day of classes. And we want them to be successful in their classes and their training. So we let them know, like, okay, we need to figure out childcare first, because this is not an easy process. Sometimes it's impossible to find childcare in 2 or 3 weeks. It can take us a few months to find childcare, and we want you. So we work on a new educational plan with them to make sure that they're going to be successful in their training. Another fact has Tiffany mentioned about childcare is the cost and how expensive it can be due to all the expenses that the center has. And we thought that once we have funding to be able to support with childcare with a cost, it was going to be so much easier with our customers to receive this service. But it is still a big challenge for them, like to find a provider with available spots and with a schedule that works for them. So, and I don't know if any of you have any new information or what has been your experience working with participants, or any new information that surprised you.
Hi, this is Samir from Clackamas Workforce Partnership. I'm the business services manager, and the two sectors I work on are early childhood education and construction. I like the slide about that had the entrepreneurs and versus babysitting, and I too I'm new to this in just about a year and a half, but looking at childcare as a business is something like that I don't think a lot of people do in our society. And even in this role early on, I was guilty of not recognizing that with a grant project that early childcare providers could have qualified for. And, you know, I missed an opportunity to let them know about a grant that they could have, that was intended for small businesses. So I just really think, you know, it's good to constantly remind people that they are small businesses, and they do need support, a lot of technical support. And I think part of that is like with costs, like you mentioned that. I don't think childcare providers often capture their own value, and err on the side of maybe not charging enough for their services, for fear of maybe putting off families or, you know, so anyway, I just wanted to say that, just introduce myself, and thank you for having this session.
Okay, thank you so much, Samir.
Really, no, thank you for saying that, Samir, because it's all true. That is what providers are struggling with every day of making those decisions of, okay, do I charge at what I feel like I'm valued at, or do I just charge at what I know families need? And usually they err on the other side because that's just they are in a service industry. They feel for parents. They want to be there for them. So like I said earlier, this isn't about, a lot of times not about making money, but then you are faced with tough decisions where, again, passion doesn't pay the bills. So
Yeah.
what do
I
you
like your
do?
point about the broken system. You know, Jan's example highlights that, you know, this is a family with presumably a lot of money, that couldn't even find childcare. So, you know, imagine somebody without that much money, the access that they need or don't have. And so that's also, so that I think, you know, coming back to workforce, we have to incentivize people to go into this profession, because it is a profession. They are educators. So, and I think I like that you talked about that with the video and other slides. But we need teachers to do it. So we need the workforce, so that there are centers or, you know, providers out there. So to increase the number of slots. So one of that is paying them accordingly.
Yeah, and I will speak from personal experience that, like I mentioned in my experience, I worked in the classrooms. I was in there and I wanted to be in the classrooms. I wanted to be there for the kids. And my ultimate decision to switch to CCR&R and apply here it was mainly due to the pay and how I wasn't being paid enough and for what my experience was. And I cried on the phone with my boss saying, I'm really sorry that I have to leave, but I need to because I need more money. And I don't want to because I love the kids. I loved being there for them. But that was a tough decision that I had to make. And unfortunately, a lot of others are having to make the same decisions.
Yeah, we need to reduce the turnover. So
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Cindy.
Hi, yeah. So I'm even thinking that it would be so nice if we had employers in the community and developers that would come up with a system of incorporating a daycare center within their buildings. That would be so helpful for parents going to work, knowing that their children are right there and they're safe and they can pop down on their lunch break to see them, that sort of thing. But
yeah, we actually had an event back in June, that highlighted 3 employers from the region. One was Siemens Childhood Development Center. One was Daimler Truck, and one was
Venture Graphics.
No, that's Siemens, same thing. One it's Rose Villa, the senior care, but they've opened Rosebud, the preschool on site, and so it was all about employers who are doing just that. Cindy, Daimler Truck has a childcare center on site. They partnered with a well-known center provider, and Siemens Child Care Development Center, that's been around for 30 some odd years. And so we're increasingly engaging, employers in this conversation around how can they support their workforce. The host of our was Peter is on our board, and he has a company where they thought about providing a voucher for their employees. But again, going back to Jan's example, it doesn't matter if you give them a voucher for childcare that doesn't exist. So anyway, yeah, we're increasingly engaging employers in this conversation to see how they can support their workforce and even others in the area.
Okay, thank you so much, Samir. And yeah, any other questions or something that you would like to add? And I know that another very useful information that I've learned from working with Tiffany is that, and maybe some parents don't know this, is how there are very simple things that we don't even know what to look when you visit a daycare to see if it is a good fit for your children. For example, one of the questions that stuck in my head is that, are the outlets covered? Are the toys appropriate for children's age? Those kind of small things will make a difference when you try to find a center that's going to be safe for your children.
Yeah, part of the work that I do when I'm having conversations with parents who are maybe reluctant to explore childcare is I've got a whole, for lack of a better term, an entire email that's dedicated to nothing but resources for parental support, for child development, but also through findchildcare.org or findchildcareoregon.org. They have a list of questions that parents should consider asking when they're interviewing providers. And that's part of the standard kit that I roll out to the folks I'm working with so that they can take that with them and consider what they want to ask, depending on who they're interviewing. And there are definitely, I guarantee you, yes, Julia, you are correct. There are questions that you would not think of that everybody should be asking. So I'm glad that resources like this do exist. So I've got everything all saved in the folders and I can go right to it. But people are very, a lot of times they're just very reluctant. I mean, you get a receipt for dropping off your dry cleaning. What do you get when you drop your kid off with a child care provider? Just, and so a lot of parents are really, really reluctant to put their precious little ones into the hands of other people. And anything that we can do to have conversations and acknowledge that those are very legitimate feelings and concerns, but then also try to guide them towards taking the power to ask those questions and feel comfortable with the answers. And my colleagues and I, we've been talking about resurrecting some of the workshops and things that we've done in the past now that people have some more flexibility to come into the office. And one of the ideas that I'm kicking around is sort of like a child care preparatory workshop, and maybe leveraging some of the expertise in this virtual room of ours, in addition to what we can provide and family coaches and everything else to really help guide the conversation and thinking towards the idea of being okay with accessing childcare in the first place. And because that conversation can take some time, and we're also in the business of trying to build up the number of providers, I feel like, you can't really solve one problem without addressing the other anyway. So just we're very open to trying to figure out how to get people okay with that. And I'm really, really, every time I attend one of these, I've been to a number of different consortiums and things like that, and it's really gratifying to see the hard work that everybody's putting in to childcare, both at the local, state, and national levels, at all of them. And I just want to thank you guys for putting this information out here. And I wish that more people were here to take advantage of this session. Hopefully the next one will be even better attended. But yeah, really, really good, valuable information for us all to have. So thank you all for putting this together.
Thank you, Kelvin. And yeah, I think if there are any other questions, I'm going to pass it to Gabby or Tiffany. Thank you.
think that's my cue. I don't know if we have any other questions or anything that we can assist in answering for you during this time as we have finished the data and sharing portion of our conversation today. So if you have any questions, feel free to hold up your hand or put them in the chat. I know we've had a lot of good discussion today, so if not, that's all right. So now what? That's a good question. So some of the things that we've talked about today, you actually will be learning about in the next couple of sessions that are coming up. Our next session is managing expectations and understanding the barriers to childcare. That's really coming from a place of a resource navigator trying to assist families and some of their expectations and how to manage that, along with our own expectations. You heard from Crystal and Julia today, including several others who said, you know, I didn't know. My expectation is, okay, well, we have money to pay for tuition or childcare, but there's no slots. Well, that's frustrating. What's the point then? How do we help? Well, how do you think families feel? And then just the waiting game that happens with that. And so we have the pleasure of having Crystal and Julia helping lead that discussion from their point of view and their experiences, especially with the partnership that we've had with Tiffany and Clackamas ESD around serving families this last year. Lessons learned, things to consider, but again, mostly trying to manage our own expectations through data and information, and also the how. How do we do that? How do we have those hard conversations? Where do we go? And then the third session is those resources and tools. Many of the organizations and initiatives that you heard about earlier today are going to be represented at the resources and tools learning session, which is our last session. So we will have representatives from 211, Preschool for All, Preschool Promise, sorry. Tiffany will be there representing Child Care Resource and Referral, Head Start. So several other resources that hopefully people know about, but also learning more about how do we help families get prepared to access them. So through all of these different, these last two sessions, hopefully some of you will be there next week, but they all tie together to help resource navigators, providers, child care advocates and whatnot to prep families to make this process a little bit easier, or at least gain some more patience and understanding during the time. So last but not least, we do have a survey that we do hope that you fill out to help inform us about building this community of practice. We are wanting to hear from folks what information is out there that you would like to learn more about. Kelvin, I think we shared earlier in the chat, we would love to be able to assist with that vision or that idea that you have about workshops, because it's not something that just Clackamas Community College or the CESD can do. It's going to take all of us to be able to support our communities. So I will put the survey link in the chat. And we do hope that you are registered and consider attending next week's session. Again, all of these are going to be recorded and will be posted live somewhere, but we will keep you posted and get you links of these once they're edited and whatnot. And we do appreciate your feedback. And Tiffany, I'm going to hand it off to you for one last moment. I think there's some resources that we can share, or no? Yes. That you pointed out in the slide deck. And I'm going to put the survey in the chat for everybody. Does anyone want any lasting words or parting words here? If not, I put the survey in the chat here for this session. We really appreciate everybody being here today. If you click on that link, that should take you to the survey, and that will help us for our next session. So if there is nothing else, please let us know, and really appreciate you all being here today. Thanks for joining us.